What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Contractor Secrets podcast. Today is something a little bit different. I was invited to join Nick Slavik on Ask a Painter Live, and with his permission, he allowed me to repurpose the episode for this podcast. So make sure you flood him with likes, comments, and shares on his Ask a Painter page if you enjoyed this episode. As some of you have heard Nick Slavik on my podcast, the guy is a wealth of information. He is the North Star of the painting industry, which many of you are a part of. If you are not a part of the industry, the painting industry, that's okay. Nick Slavik, this guy is disciplined. He's got systems, standards, and processes, and it shines through in our conversation, which hopefully will shine through to you and help you implement some of the same practices and elevate your business. So check it out. This was a phenomenal conversation, a little bit long, but every bit of it was jam-packed with value. Always a pleasure, always honored to join Nick on his show. Starts right now.
Contractors all over the world are wanting more time, more freedom, more impact. The way we do this is through implementing systems, processes, standards. Welcome to the Contractor Secrets podcast. Here we hit business strategy, coaching, mindset, motivation, the tools you need for success. So strap in, listen up, and get ready to grow on the Contractor Secrets podcast.
Hey everybody, we'll do our formal introduction here. So I am Nick Slavik. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It is a weekly live Facebook show where I sort of highlight the life of a master craftsperson and paint business entrepreneur. And for the six of you who have never heard of Tanner, my good friend Tanner, this is Tanner. He is one of the most interesting people I've met in this industry, and we're going to do a deep dive on him today, talk a lot about the things that we're most interested in. First off, some housekeeping things. I have one more master's class left this year, and that's this Friday in Michigan with our good friend, Bradley Ellison.
Wow.
Bradley Ellison did the Lord's work. He lined up a master's class. He got an underwriter, and he even talked Jason Parison into joining us as well, too. So as you guys know, the two brothers from Minnesota, me and Jason, are heading on a plane tomorrow over to see Bradley, Lauren, all the rest of our gathering of Michigan painters. And it's going to be a great master's class. And
yeah, talk about a great acronym. GOMP.
GOMP. Well, so actually Jason and I, gathering of Minnesota painters, were the first GOMP, gathering of Minnesota painters. So we refer to the gathering of Michigan painters as GOMIP. They refer to themselves as GOMP, but you know what? We're all friends. It's okay. But there is only one GOMP. There is only one GOMP. One of my favorites is I was actually just in Ohio, Gathering of Ohio Painters, Goop. That's got to be the best one in the industry. So no, it's a good thing.
Whoever makes the shirts first wins.
I know, right? No, it's a weird thing. I think I was telling you about this last time. Jason and I started this gathering group in the same way that you started the painting contractors group, because people are doing this anyway. And we just brought some order and some direction to it like that and gathered up some people. And it's sort of like turned into this really cool organic grassroots thing across the country where you hit the entire world and you're grabbing people everywhere. These little weird groups are not only have a Facebook group component, there's an in-person meeting, and I think in our group, we have 260 members, and we get together and there's 40, 45 of us every time.
That's wild. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. What are the discussions like? What do you guys talk about?
Oh, dude, listen, you would like this a lot. So we, as you would expect, Jason and I have an agenda for every meeting. And what it is we want it to be the anathema of almost every other group you can find. So what we do is we get content driven by the actual members. So this is not a vendor standing up. This is not even me and Jason standing up. We will start the group, and then basically we have 3 sessions where contractors from our areas talk about a certain subject as how it relates to their lives and their business. And we crowdsource those topics. So the last time we had a meeting, we had, I think, 2 topics. One is always estimating. It just is, right? And as you know, and
striking similarity to the group.
Dude, we're all the same, man.
Yeah.
And the other one was mental health. And we started off the discussion with mental health, and we did not get to another subject. And It was just like an hour and a half of just like people talking about their personal, professional lives, their employees,
Yeah.
their clients, how it all intertwines, and the risk and reward and the headspace of a contractor. So,
Wow. I think if you peel that onion back in any capacity, that's what'll happen. I think it's such an undervalued topic. I think even as I approach this conversation, I'm like, mental health is, balance, mental health and business is just something that doesn't get talked about much. But I could see that's pretty an interesting insight from your perspective in a gathering. I think in person opens up a lot more, vulnerability, but that's pretty neat, man. That's awesome to hear.
It's a weird thing to witness. So all the things that we've created, Tanner, create a lot of data points, right? And give us a lot of perspective. When I look into the group, it's a lot of very technical, tactical things. A lot of the stuff, the people you know and love get real heady and they start talking about esoteric things.
Yeah.
It's completely different when you go personal. It's almost boring to talk about what do you charge for X, and you only start talking about the personal side of business. And one thing isn't better than the other, but there is, I think one thing we've learned in COVID too, is there is some value, and people see in-person stuff through a different filter and lens than they do online stuff.
Agreed.
So, yeah,
Agreed.
it's really weird. Okay, so last bit of house cleaning. The PCA has a business accelerator. Jason and I's little pet project here. We launched a beta cohort, and there is one real cohort going through now. It's about 10 contractors, and we're basically putting them through a crash course of professionalization. There will be a link after this in there. If you're interested, let us know. As political regimes go, when a president and first lady come in to office, they have a cause, right? They take on something and try to move the needle on. I guess if I follow that analogy, I am Jason's first lady, and we are in the PCA on the board of directors, and our cause is professionalizing this industry, as is yours. And nobody's moving the needle more than Tanner, and that's why we're talking here today.
Wow.
So,
well, that's humbling. Thank you.
Number one, Tanner, we do have to hit on the bases for, like I said, the 6 people who don't know who you are. You own a painting business.
I do, believe it or not, and I'm very passionate about it. I love my painting business. We don't move at the speed of sound, but I've started small. I was painting. I may have told you this. I had the painter's pants on, and I do love it. I really do. I love the transformations, but I transitioned that love to actually just loving building teams that produce results and encourage each other, and the progression is actually a new love that I have for it. I'm sure you share that same passion as seeing somebody go from something to something even greater. And I love giving opportunity through this vehicle. What a fun business, is this work?
Well, and so, some days I could absolutely argue that it's work. And some days, the majority of them, it's like, yeah, man, there's, you take for granted. I have this thought all the time when I interact with my peer group, people not my paint business industry peers, right? Like just outside, my neighbors, my friend cohort, my wife's friends, things like that. Sure. There is a whole bunch of people who don't like their jobs, man. Like it surprises me. Like we literally devote more time to this than our families every day. Sure. And there's a whole pile of people out here that say, pay and benefits are good, but what are you going to do? I hate work every day.
Right. It's always been a priority of mine because I know what that's like to not enjoy what you do, and I'm sure you do. I've had jobs where it just was one of those things where you have to grit through it. And at the end of the day, you're always looking for an out. And sometimes it doesn't even have to do with the money. So for me, I always try to create an environment for my team to enjoy what they do, to zero in on their craft. I think it starts with the hiring and setting expectations, which I know you do very well, to ensure that you're bringing in the right people with the right motivation. So it goes all the way down the line. Another part of that, something that's intrinsic to me, is creating an environment that if someone sits at the table with their family, the biggest stress in their life isn't what was created at the job, because that goes all the way down to the kids, and it's like, I care about that stuff. I don't want stress to care. It's just work, and if it's a repeat offense, or if it's something that keeps happening, obviously that'll be dealt with, but I try to keep it super calm, cool, and collected at all times in my business. Sometimes deadlines don't get hit. I just did a kind of like a talk on this about whose responsibility is it really to make sure deadlines get hit? And it's one of those things where I've heard, you asked me about some patterns and some questions that I get in the group, and even just, from peers. And it's like, well, should we make them work Saturday if the deadline doesn't get hit and we have a job to start Monday, or should we have them stay late till 6, 7 o'clock to get it done? And it's like, when you have employees, you really have to find that balance and be careful what demand you're putting on your team. Because I found that it creates resentment if proper training wasn't there, proper resources weren't there, and ultimately everything's my fault. So, that's been the balance that I've been working on, at least in the last 6 to 8 months, of just trying to keep things cool, keep scheduling on par, make sure my time frames are correct, those sorts of things.
Yeah, we find ourselves say this in the company all the time, which is, we're very serious about this, but there's no pain emergencies. Like, we don't hold people's lives in here. We're not surgeons, right? We're not firefighters. We're not cops.
Yeah.
We're not really dictating the future path of another human's life. So listen, it's important to us.
Unless they're moving in.
Yeah. Well, and even that, it's like, listen, if we actually do some first principle reasoning, which we do all the time, which is like, what happens if we don't get the main level done and they move all the furniture in? Oh, well, we move some furniture and we work around. It's like, it's like there is no emergencies, right?
There is no emergency. I have a question for you.
Oh, of course.
I've had some customers stress me out lately. I mean, honestly. Honestly, I just want to know, do you ever let customers break your skin? Like, I mean, do you ever let it get to you, like on a level where, like, you just deal with a customer that's maybe a little unruly, or just kind of just maybe, a little too demanding, or putting pressure on your team, and your team's like responding to you, like on a like interpersonal level? Does that ever get to you to where maybe, we talk about mental health and all that stuff? Do you ever bring that home? Like, Did that ever happen to you?
Yeah. Sliding scale. And I've had a real progression through this, and we've probably done something similar, Tanner, where I have this crazy irrational sense of justice and injustice. And like when we promise something.
That's your military background?
Yeah, I think, you witness a lot of stuff in life. And I even had this, I mean, the military was probably one of the worst things that ever happened to me because of that. Because all it is a bunch of injustices around there, And even as a kid, I had this, like, it fired me up. And when we promise something and we deliver, and a client's like, no, you didn't say that. Oh, I just like,
that's what
I just get wild, man.
All right, cool. All right. That's because I have because like, I'm going to make a promise and keep it. Okay. Yeah. I know what you mean there. Okay. I was just checking.
So and again, circle of trust. It's only you and me, right? Nobody else is listening.
Yeah, right.
1.1% of all of our clients this year will not enjoy the experience with us as much as we would like them to, right? Like, that's just, I weep for every single one of those clients, because it's likely that it's our fault, right? Nobody's perfect. But the longer I do this, this used to cripple me, honestly, Tanner. Like, I attach my name to the business, my business to my name, my business to my future. If I had a good job and I made money, I'm the king of the world. If a client wasn't happy, I'm getting divorced, I'm moving out of state, I'm quitting this industry. Like, it was the roller coaster that we all do. But as I learned to be a more mature leader, you realize there's your part and the client's part. Clients are always going to do what they do, right? Like, we're in a mass customization industry where we're going to do 650 jobs this year, and we're going to be judged 650 different ways, right? There is not a standard. We are not McDonald's. We don't make a thing and people come to us knowing what they get. We take a custom thing to a custom human in a custom home. So now what I realized is my part of my company's part is not saying anything you don't know, setting proper expectations, and then following through on that promise. You can get rid of 98% of every one of those crappy interactions. 1.1% are still going to do whatever they do. Even if you have it in writing, even if you said it 9 times, 9 emails, these people are always going to do what they're beavers, and they build dams. If you put them on the top of the New York Empire State Building, they will look for logs to build a dam. That's what they do. And it is what it is. I've now realized that I can make a comfortable emotional detachment, knowing that it doesn't matter what we could have done. We could have promised, performed, gave the job away for free, apologized to them, and they still would say, I don't like you.
Yeah.
I don't like you.
Wow. And that's interesting, because you are your brand. It's Nick Slavik's Painting and Restoration. Literally, I can detach in a sense. It's
Yep.
premium painting. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
You know, like some people don't even know me or know who I am. So that's interesting. But there's a part of that where it's like, you know, I kind of didn't even think about that. I'm like, wow, you could get to a point where you actually tie your identity to this. And if you have somebody that 1.1%, and that's actually a good amount in comparison to what we do. If you're doing 650 jobs, you go through this, you know, almost once a month where you're dealing with this situation. If 6 of your jobs, you know, so that says a lot, you know. And I mean, how do you manage your team members when they're in war, right? I know that that's happened too, because there's times where my guys would be in war, and this happened maybe 2 or 3 times this year where I'm actually going to go to the job and paint just to be with them, which those of you who follow me know me, like I haven't painted in a long time. You don't want me painting. I'd rather give that to somebody who's really good at it. My mind works too fast, but I'll be there cleaning up, working with them, just because my presence alone takes the pressure off my leader. It's almost like I'm going into battle with them and then pulling them out and then just being like, you know, back off my team, because you're going to hurt the culture that we've built through. Do you follow me on that?
Yes. What I just heard you say is a good leader supports their people. And sometimes that's in person, shoulder to shoulder. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
You know, we won, we got, I think we have a picture here. We got 2 national awards last year for this crazy Victorian. And I literally took 2 weeks off and sat there and threw the bags on, and every day worked with the team. I burned 1,800 calories a day, and I walked 13 miles a day around one single house.
It's the blue one?
Support green one. We got this
green one.
Yeah,
I remember that one.
Green Victorian. So but no, it's the same thing. It's like, listen, it's the biggest project we've done in years, and you know what? I'm going to be there, even if it's a safety blanket, even if it's just like we got a question and Nick's right there. It's easier to shout off the roof than it is to slack me. So
So as a leader, you kind of know when to go, right? Like, you know, when it's one of those things where you need to be there, be present, to get your team through battle in some cases.
Yeah. So whether we document this stuff or not, Tanner, as business owners, all we do is pattern detection. And the best business owners that I know codify a lot of this pattern detection. We try to make all these lists. You know, my famous PBC list, people be crazy list. We actually like have a list of things that makes client part of that 1.1%. And we look for that so we can possibly not let them into the castle walls.
Can you give me something that's on that list? I want to know.
What would be So, all right. When we talk about this, again, circle of trust.
Sure.
I'm sure some of my clients may run across this. So here's the deal. This is not a punitive list, right? 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of these things doesn't make you a bad person or a bad client. But when we look at the data, people who have not had a good time in my company, even though we've promised and performed, have these traits, which is I'll buy the paint, right? And that means we just completely lost control of any sort of thing like that. I want a discount.
Okay.
I have 18 very specific requests that you can't possibly comply with on the job.
Sure.
We get into some things where take this in the manner in which it's intended, but designers, people who work for labor unions, commercial construction project managers, like those people have a proclivity to insert themselves into a way in the project to make it never be a success for you, you know, things like that. So
all those are so true. That's interesting. And it sounds like you do reflections after something like that, because you anticipate this anomaly that's going to occur. And then you probably sit down with your team afterwards and say, okay, what did we miss here? And then you add it to a list. Beautiful.
Yes. And so Bradley Ellison just said lawyers. Yes, that is another one as well too. Bradley, you know, well, lawyers.
That's true.
And you know, what's really interesting about that list of things.
Sure.
I started off in this industry of like, all these potential employees have horrible resumes. They're all horrible employees. All these clients who give us problems, they're all horrible clients. Honestly, the more I get into this industry, the more I realize it's our fault, Tanner. Our industry is 99% single owner operated, largely unprofessional. Doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that there's nothing written down. It's a variable product. There's no systems. And if I was a homeowner, you almost have to say, I'm going to buy the paint because I'm so afraid that you, as a crappy contractor who has that reputation, is going to buy builder's flat. And I really just want something. I'm going to pay you a lot of money. I just want my money. So I don't hold it against employees with these horrible resumes. There's a lot of bad businesses out there. And I don't hold it against my clients, because there are, if you call 10 contractors, 7 or 8 out of those 10 will probably give you a less than ideal experience. And, that's what we're fighting against.
Here's a notion. I think of it like this. It's homeowners versus contractors, not just painting contractors.
Yeah.
So in other words, what's interesting
100%.
is that if they hired roofers 2 months ago and the roofers were horrible, maybe they left nails all over, they did all sorts of crazy things on the job, they don't say, okay, well, this is a painting experience, so I'm going to give them a fresh slate. I'm going to go in with full trust. It's like, no, the roofers screwed me. You're probably going to screw me too. And it's the same way with landscapers. And it's like, so not only are we fighting against like our own industry's inability to raise their standards, we're fighting against the homeowner's perception of all contractors, which I found is hard because they have no problem mentioning, hey, the roofers took my deposit. Okay, so it's a tough, teeter totter.
Proof of that is we're almost like, we have such a big data set from doing so much stuff and tracking it so closely that when I trained my 2 estimators, and when I go out and give my estimating master's class, the overall like macro thought that I want these people to have is, every single question that a client is going to ask you as a painting contractor on an estimate, if you think about it, is, are you going to take advantage of me? So when you say, well, who's going to do the work? They're actually wanting to know, did you train these people? Are they licensed? Have you done background check? When they say, what shine paint do you use? People don't even care the manufacturer of paint or the shine. All they really want to ask is, are you going to buy crappy builder's flat and screw me out?
That underlying question, are you going to take advantage of me, is the question of every consumer in an unfamiliar buying capacity, 100%. Right? So when you go, if you've never bought a car, like you're going into a car dealership, are you going to take advantage of me? Like I'm sourcing out concrete contractors. I have no clue, not a slightest idea. My first thought is, are you taking advantage of me? And how do I combat that? Either you do a phenomenal job of building trust with me, or I have to get other quotes to compare.
That's it.
And that's the buyer's, mindset.
Yeah. Sadly, Tanner, the way that it gets better for all of us and our clients is, think about online shopping in 2001, right? Sure. Like when you were afraid to type your credit card, like literally everybody older than us were like, I am not putting my credit card anywhere near my computer. It'll suck the numbers right off it, and I'm going to get fraud. And now, I mean, think of what Amazon and those online retailers have done. There's nobody that bats an eye about putting all their information into a computer and getting it. Yeah. But the reason that worked is the vast majority of all those companies are pros. And in our industry, that is not the case. So until we get that critical mass, we are going to have to gain the trust in some amazing ways during these estimates.
Wow, that is a powerful analogy. Do you think that the franchises that are making their way into this industry are going to push the needle harder and harder toward that?
2 things. I love those franchises, right? I'm big fans. I actually work. I've done some consulting for them. I know a lot of the leadership teams personally. I love this stuff. A lot of the franchisees around me are great people. I love them. The problem is they haven't taken over the industry. That's a strong data point, which is, you would think on paper, they have all the systems, all the processes. They have a mothership with coaches and that to help you apply those things. On average, they are much larger and more professional than the average paint business. But I think if the average paint business is 100,000 to 150,000, they're probably 350 to 500,000. So they're much bigger, but they're not all the ones who are 8 million, right? And the biggest limiting factor, Tanner, when I look at this industry, is still the driver. It's still so dependent on the human who's in charge. So I think it almost doesn't matter franchise or not. I think if you take a Jason Paris and give him a franchise, you get one result, and you take one of these unprofessional guys who are putting F words on your painters group all the time and give them a franchise, you get a completely different result. So, one of those things. Yeah. Speaking of your group here, we talked about your painting business. We should also mention that you have created the coolest painting group on the internet. painting contractors, which we're
Means a lot.
broadcasting to now. And you just posted a couple days ago. How many members do you have now, Tanner?
Man, we have somehow managed to hit 150,000 members. Wild. Don't know how many of those are actually painting contractors. I'm going to assume that it's safe to say 30%, to be very, very modest, which is still 50,000, individuals that have done some form of painting, that work in the industry, that are an employee of an industry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like everyone that I interact with is a part of this group. A lot of pressure.
Yeah. So I had this interesting thought the other day. So that I look at industry data very closely because it kind of puts your whole world into check. If you believe the statistics in our industry, there's likely 300,000 painting companies in the United States, and there's likely 450 to 475,000 people who call themselves painters in the United States. So let's say if every one of your members, the 150,000, are actually people who earn a W-2 or own a painting or earn a W-2 paycheck or own a company, you touch a third of the entire painting industry in the United States.
Wild.
It's pretty incredible, man. And let's say worst case scenario, you're full of Russian bots and there's only 50,000 painters in there. Dude, you're still touching 8 to 10% of the entire industry. And honestly, I was trying to figure out who else. I don't know of another entity, person, or thing or group that touches that much of this single industry. So hats off to you, man. Seriously.
Yeah, every time we talk, it goes up 50 grand. So, we talked 41 weeks ago, and I think we were approaching 100,000. And I know that because I was on episode 300. That was big for me.
Dude.
I took my family out to dinner over it. It was great.
I assume you got your royalty check from the show. Yeah.
Yep, I got my royalty check. We went on a cruise. Thank you. No, I'm kidding. Now we're at 341. Is it? So anyway, so that was funny to be able to, hey, I've always been, there's only 3 others that have hit the century mark on your show. So I'm great.
That's it, man. I love that you think about that. So yeah, we got some big milestones coming up, but one of the things that I was thinking about in your group is you guys, there's we talked about franchise, like Freshcoat has 180 businesses, franchises around the US, and they have a stream of data from 180 businesses. And it's likely that you have a stream from somewhere between 30 to 50 to 100,000 people coming in. So trends, pattern detection. I'd like to share my sort of outside looking in.
I want to hear that.
You sure?
You want to hear me first? I'll go first. And then
no, I definitely want to hear you first. Okay. What are the trends? What are people thinking about? What surprises you?
Well, first of all, you have different tiers. And I love this because, again, if I had this when I first started my painting business, like I would be posting every day, asking questions, because it's like, hello, what other, again, there's no other entity that this focus, this active, people are always on it. You can get a question answer within seconds, all the above. But we have, a poll that I could just put out within seconds, and 502 votes. I put the poll out yesterday, and it was just about a lunch break, and really all I said was residential painter lunch break. I didn't put any context toward it. I just gave some answers that people can vote on. And really that's for a few reasons. It's going to touch a few different individuals. Number one, it's going to touch the employees of companies who maybe are being underappreciated, or maybe in an environment where they think something like a 30-minute unpaid lunch is normal, right? Well, guess what that does? That makes them question if they're being treated properly as employees. If the vast majority of a group in a specific industry and trade is voting on 30 minutes paid as a standard, right? As the average. So very interesting on that part, right? So you have the metric of the employee in a company that has low standards, and that's all they know because they don't have the exposure of anything else, right? So what does that do? That changes their perception of our industry. That could be a future owner business leader that now has a different perspective that he's going to put into his employees when it's his turn, because he recognizes something's wrong. And I think that's the first aspect of change, is just recognizing that something needs to be changed, right? So that's interesting. And then you have the business owners who want to be better, who want to do more for their employees, who want to give more to their team members. And maybe they're currently doing, a 30-minute paid, and they see that the vast majority of people that they look up to. I don't know what your vote was on that. But in my company, we do an hour paid, and maybe somebody looks up to the way I do business and say, you know what, Tanner's doing an hour paid. That's pretty cool. I'm looking at the people that I follow and I look at who voted on this, and it's like, you know what? Hey team, guess what we're going to start doing? An hour paid lunch for you guys. And maybe they see a change in the culture. Maybe that's something that their team members have been asking them, like 30 minutes isn't enough. So, you know, it's so cool. Like, I don't know. I just love this stuff. I love asking the questions, getting the feedback, because it impacts so many different, and that was just two entities of a business owner who wants to create a better environment, and then maybe an employee who's in not a positive environment. So I could keep going, but that's kind of
that. So interestingly enough, a subject like that touches on a lot of the things we talked about, which is culture of the company, sometimes even morality, perspective, mental headspace, deadlines. I mean, it's a weird, like, so people like you and me and a lot of the people in the group are stuck in this world of, well, if I go to the Florida State Department of Economic and whatever, employment, labor, something, there's some laws, there's some employment laws, right? But if you run a company only following the law, you can sometimes set it up for disaster.
Sure.
And you need to do some other things. Like, we don't need to, you know, there's a lot of gray areas, and there's not anywhere for people like us to get these answers. So your group and questions like that is huge, because in the state of Minnesota, you talked about, do you make people work Saturday to get a deadline? Legally in Minnesota, I can force overtime and fire you on the spot if you don't take it. Tanner, what kind of culture would I create in my company? Like, that's insane. Like, especially when we wander into a 4-day work week, my people craft a life around having Fridays off. A lot of my painters are the daycare, the stay-at-home parent on Friday, so their spouse can do something else. Sure. If I told them on a Thursday, you're working Friday, mandatory, they'd be like, you are forcing me to choose my family or you.
Agreed. Yeah.
And at some point it's like, okay, legally, I feel great. I can do this. It's like, great, your company's burning down. So now there's that area of like, do you follow the law? Do you follow morals? Somewhere in between? And it's like, but that group and that question, it's just, I mean, some people may think of it as this flippant, just, oh, breaks or not, lunch or not, paid or not. Those are deep philosophical questions. What kind of business do you want to build? What kind of people do you want to entrust with your company? Things like that. They are deeply meaningful.
Interesting enough, as a employee, the reason I do an hour paid lunch is because I remember what it was like to get a 30-minute paid lunch. Just being honest. I don't know if anyone has remembered this or experienced this, but for me, I would clock out. I'd go to wherever I was going to get my lunch. That was 15 minutes waiting in line and doing all that. By the time I sat down, I had 10 minutes left, and I'm shoveling my food down, and I got to bumble back into work. And, you know, I would wind up just taking an extra 10 minutes because that's just what I needed. And then I got written up for it. And I said, you know, what kind of culture is this where I'm, you know, and here's the worst part. If, let's say, you have a errand to run, like, hey, when else can they go to the DMV? When else can they go to the laundromat if they need to? When else, you know, and it's like one of those things where it's like, hey, they can talk to their spouse, say, hey, I have an hour lunch break. I'll hit it on my lunch break today. I'll go drop that off for you. I'll go pick up that for you. I can come home and give this to you. And it's like, it just, you know, it's worked for me. Now, I don't know if that's working for everyone. I just know that I haven't found people take advantage of it. You know, I haven't. And it's one of those things where in some cases, after 45 minutes, they'll come back to work. You know, and it's something I don't really need to police. So it's just interesting, you know, how and again, the culture of what these questions provide.
What's really interesting is I waffle between wanting to have like the most interesting painting company in the United States with the craziest amount of weird benefits that helps them and the company. But I've been through versions of this company where you do kind of offer the world on a platter, but it wasn't backed up by a performance culture. And so that creates a lot of problems too. So it's great to offer your people everything. I had a contractor come to my shop this morning and we talked for an hour and a half about pay and benefits and how to incentivize people. And all of this is okay. A lot of large businesses, professional businesses outside of our industry offer unlimited paid time off. And guess what? It creates people actually take less paid time off when they have unlimited paid time off, interestingly enough. So you're almost like, you have to be really careful about what you offer, But these businesses, the reason unlimited paid time off works off because these people share your core values and it's a performance driven culture. So it's mission first, and then all those benefits are there.
Sure.
Where companies get into trouble is we have paid time off, we have hour lunches, we have health insurance, we have retirement and all this stuff. And guess what? You haven't hit a budget in 2 years. Now, all of a sudden, all of that stress comes to us instead of shared with them. So we always have to balance that sort of thing. So yeah.
Agreed. I saw your job posting. I mean, every time I read it, I'm like, man, this is such a great opportunity. And it's almost, I feel like are you hiring to replace or hiring to grow right now?
Everything. Yeah. So, Tanner, one of the biggest struggles I've had personally in trying to be a leader of this organization is coming to grips with what does employment mean nowadays. I grew up in a community, and I was probably one of the last generation to touch that. I get a job, I stick with it for 32 years, and I retire from it. Like, that's the culture of the community that I came from. Wow. And there is not a person younger than us, Tanner. They laugh at that sort of thing. Like, if you stay at a job for 32 years, you're a sucker. Something went wrong, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
You know, when I see those people's resumes 15 years ago, if you see somebody change job every 6 to 9 months,
10 different jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were embarrassed by it and they made a lot of excuses. And nowadays they'll look you right in the face and say, yeah, job sucked, owner sucked. I moved on. I just wanted to try something different. And employment is mobile. People do not think about jobs in the same way they did anymore. I hold this deep-seated belief that to really get time and money freedom in life, you find something you get really good at, you stay with it for a long time, and then you find the opportunities within it. That is not a belief that I see expressed by anybody younger than us. And this is not Nick with gray in the beard saying kids these days. It's like, Tanner, I go with the data. I have in the 15 years of interviewing people for this position, for anybody who comes into the trades at a technician, apprentice, craftsperson level, I have never once interviewed a human who had a performance-based rated job. I've never interviewed somebody who said, oh yeah, my time is quantified, I'm paid based on that.
Unless it's sales, of course, but not in a technical aspect.
No, right? And in my company, we have an hourly budget for a project, and you have to hit 75% of your budgets every quarter to be eligible for a raise. And that is just not present in people's lives at the entry level like that. And so it takes actually a lot of coaching to get that like up to speed like that. But I've really had a personal struggle with building a company and setting it up for high performers like Tanner's and Nick's, and then seeing people not do very well in the company. And I had to realize, like, Tanner's and Nick's are master generalists. We can do anything. We can paint, we can sell, we can manage, we can go find work can come to us, we can problem solve, we can think into the future. That's not a lot of common traits shared by a lot of other people. Doesn't make them good, doesn't make them bad, but people are not master generalists. They're generally not optimists, and they're generally not looking forward to the challenges that you and I look forward to all the time. So I set up a company for that. I had to set up a company for a completely different personality type. And it's taken me a lot of years to come to grips with that, Tanner. And it's actually probably been the biggest constriction point.
So let me ask you this. If you have two different individuals, do you tailor plans to those two different personality types? Or do you have to do a blanket coverage here and say, hey, you know what? The vast majority of people in my business are not these goal-oriented, deadline achieving, or not, I guess I'm deviating, but you understand what I'm saying? Like, how do you, because that would really cut your labor pool in half, and you might be missing out on a lot of really good technicians if they're not motivated, or maybe those, the budgetary timelines, the performance, metrics stress them out, like is that where you're getting, is like, this is a really interesting game to play?
Yeah. To summarize this whole thing is that the biggest piece of knowledge I've learned and perspective over the years is people have a crazy difference in their risk and reward profile. So like guys like you and me in our painting businesses and in our software businesses and our ancillary businesses, there could be a point in our history where we actually lose money, where we have to pay from our personal funds into this business for the privilege of operating those businesses. I have never met a W-2 employee. And again, this is not a value judgment. One person isn't better or worse. I've never met a W-2 employee who had that same risk and reward profile. They are just not really willing to risk as much as we are. And we're gamblers with this stuff. Now we can skew it in our favor with hard work and preparation so that when luck does shine upon us, we're ready for it. But in my company, there's a line of bifurcation between my apprentices, craftspeople, master craftspeople, and the leadership team. The leadership team largely has a bigger risk profile. They're willing to risk a lot more. So they will take half of their pay in a base pay, benefits, and perks, and half in a bonus. And they like getting out there making that bonus. Painters have a different profile. And again, I cannot say this enough. Not good, not bad. It just is. And if you put a super risky job description and comp plan on somebody who does not want that, they're going to flake out immediately. And you can also find amazing success in finding a steady workflow, just enough reach goals to get them moving. It benefits the company, it benefits them, keeping them moving forward. But yeah, there's a big risk and reward profile. So we've had our comp plans for apprentices and craftspeople are completely different than leadership team.
Wow. I love it.
Tanner, we got some questions coming in here, so I'm going to just hit a few for you here.
Oh, okay.
Oscar Milan, great friend in the industry here. Is it wrong to train apprentices on job sites? What do you think? Oh, they're all for you now, Tanner.
Oh, these are my questions? Oh, good. Okay. Is it wrong? It's not wrong. Is it optimal? No. There's my answer. I mean, to be honest, I think, unless you have the resources and the capacity for a training facility, that's ideal. But, most of us are still in the trial and error phase, and that's our only option. And I think there's nothing wrong with it as long as it's in a controlled environment, as long as whatever you're training them on isn't detrimental. In other words, maybe if it's their first day, don't have them spray a fine finish, to where it would actually cost the team if they don't do it well. I think it's important also for you to give some sort of, heads up to your team to let them know, hey, he's going to be training, and don't just say, hey, train this guy. It's more of, hey, what is the process that this person is going to go through from start to finish? Are they prepping today? Are they learning how to tape windows? Are they learning how to plastic? So, I think honestly, like, learning in the game is probably really beneficial. I think obviously, ideally, a mixture of both. Nick, I think that's what you do, right? I'm sure it starts off in the facility, and then they take what they learn on into the game. And it's like, tying speculation with, taking action on it in an actual person's home for the first time is probably really good. So yeah, I think, yes, but not optimal, of course.
Yeah. You're going to have to train regardless. And most of us don't have a training facility. And coming from somebody who 15 years of running this business, 12, I did not have a training facility. So I would be a complete hypocrite if I said, you must have a training facility. I will tell you the pluses and minuses. We have had great success training people on site because we practice a thing called quiet professionalism, which is we teach apprentices intentionally, when you're on site, don't ever yell out, well, I've never done that before. Like, right. Hold tight. You have a master craft person working with you. Let them guide you. If the client's right there, take the discussion outside, take it elsewhere. And it actually never gave us any problems. Benefit of having a training facility like we do is, in a year-long apprenticeship, the first week or two is in there, and we see people. You think about starting a new job with new people, with a new boss, and learning a new skill you've never done. And if 20 to 30% of our workforce is women, now we have a woman coming into an entire industry where she's underrepresented. So now think of how nervous you would be, Tim. Yeah, it's insane walking into that. So now their stress level goes way down when I'm the first face they see to onboard, and they spend a week with one of our masters away from a job site, and they see every single one of our employees walk through the building and they feel the culture. So I can tell you it's a monster value add. But guess what? At the end of the week or two apprenticeship in my shop, they're still not perfect painters. So we still have to train on site. So
great perspective on the women coming into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really interesting perspective that, again, having grown up and seen the old version of the trades, our father's version of old people yelling at young people, and now the new version where we talk about mental health and we talk about 4-day work week and paid lunches. I'm glad I've experienced both, because my God, do I have perspective about how all this stuff works. So, oh my God, Lauren has one of the most amazing questions ever. What's your least favorite part about the job, Tanner?
Chasing payments.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Chasing payments, my least favorite. I just dealt with one. We take a $500 deposit. Some people feel as though if there's 5% of what's left over to be done, that they're entitled to hold the entire payment, So, and we obviously work on we pay weekly. The cash flow needs to come in. So that's usually that for me, that's my least favorite part of owning a business is when we get those situations where chasing a payment, it becomes, especially it's usually a bigger one, so for at least for me.
Yeah, agreed. And I think least favorite part about what I do is the accountability meetings. When somebody doesn't live up to the promise that they made me in the company, or one of my team doesn't live up to the promise, holding those nearest and dearest to me accountable is, I look forward to it the least, but I'm also the most rewarded and satisfied when they're done. And it's one of those, like, I think about it like running cross country in high school, which is, I hated every second of distance running, but I could have not been more satisfied when the race was over. And that satisfaction, like, brought you through all the training and all the other stuff. And I just put on my big boy pants and walk towards the firefight and get it done. And always rewarded when it's done. And I'm sure the same way when you finally get your check.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll kind of piggyback on that. It is, that's more of an administrative, woe, but I'd say like letting people go. Of course, that's going to be something that's hard because at this stage of my business, I feel like I'm pretty good at recruiting people. And I feel like I'm vetting in a sense that, like, every time I let someone go, the next hire, I'm literally even better at hiring and better at hiring. So at this stage, 6 years in, letting someone go is like detrimental in a sense, because it's almost like we've built a relationship, we've set expectations, we've identified, I've got to know you, I know your story, I know your family. And it's like, at this point, like, I have to let you go. And then that to me is always, always kind of hard. So
it's a really interesting thing, especially when you see the potential in some people. And sometimes you realize, like, man, if I would have caught this person about 6.5 years from now, I bet you this would have been a completely different outcome. Like we traffic in the industry of hiring young people and a lot of people without experience, because there's not a lot of master crafts people out there looking for a job that share our core values. So sometimes we catch people before they have enough life experience to realize what the opportunity is. And this is not me saying that, oh, we're saviors and they should be so lucky. But I think if the 450,000 people who get a W-2 check from painting could sit in on the Gathering of Minnesota meeting, painters meetings, when we talk about mental health, or hear conversations like this, I bet you they have no idea how much we bleed for the humans in our company. Yeah. And we do take this stuff home. This stuff is, I live this. This is my life. There is no work-life balance, separation, any of that. This is what I do. It's what you do. And it's tough. Like, some of us are better than others at getting that separation, but the myth of forgetting you own a painting company for a vacation is ridiculous.
There's no shut-off valve, I'll tell you that.
So we got to get to Lauren hit another one here. Does your personal brand and company culture limit who will come work for you?
Personal brand and company culture. Company culture is, you got to think, okay, here's a good one. If you put, that's maybe a little too technical, but I see all my guys in a petri dish, right? You don't want to put anything that's going to be, very harsh term, cancerous into the petri dish, or else it's going to spread, right? So for me, the culture starts with the first hire, and then you are the culture. Actually, Nick, you're the culture. You set the tone for the culture. At that point, you usually want to find people that share your values. That's a great hiring. If you had to pick one hiring principle, it'd be find someone that shares values with you. Okay. And at that point, from there, you've created something. And then whenever you bring someone in, it should just add to that. It shouldn't take away from that. So I think, like, it's a one-by-one thing. And it's like, ultimately, all starts with the hiring process and making sure that you're putting the right personalities with people. I think you probably do that as well, Nick. I mean, you're not going to pair somebody who is an A personality with someone that's an A personality. It's just, they're different. They're both going to want to lead. They're both, so I think being a good leader is also kind of just making sure people are in the right place. And, I've had times where there was individuals in my business, Nick, that I actually convinced myself I was going to let them go. I've talked to their manager and they obviously want to let them go. And I kind of took their word for it. And at the very last minute, you know what I did? I moved them to another team.
Yeah.
And that's happened twice. And they thrive. And I thank myself every day. And I say, I'm so glad I went with that decision, because I could have missed out on this person's potential. So,
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
No one's wrong. The manager who wants to let them go isn't wrong. The kid's not wrong. He just wasn't brought to his full potential, and that's on me to coach through. But yeah, I hope that answers your question, Lauren. I don't know how far we deviated from that, but felt like that was relevant.
Yeah. So piggybacking on that, a great lesson I've been handed over the last 2 years is people will completely create their snapshot and what they think of your company based on their crew experience. So you can think great of Tanner and Nick. Hey, world-class people doing world-class things. They run a crazy good organization, great opportunities. But if their crew leader is not a good leader and doesn't jive with them, their only impression of your company is going to be that 10 hours they spend a day with that crew leader. And none of the other cool stuff you're doing is going to make up. So like you said, making sure that tactical level, the day-to-day, we look for crew happiness, things like that. Lauren, also, maybe to answer this question in a different way, I don't think the culture or the personal brand has limited or even gained me any humans that it wouldn't have otherwise. But I will tell you this, running a big professional company gives you the know-how and the war chest to go hire professionals, which is a thing new to me. Like professionalism is brand new to me. Like we got a ripping leadership team. We got a great bunch of people. Things are stable. Things are consistent. And only in the last year have we been able to actually been like, you know what, if we need a salesperson, let's go hire a real salesperson instead of getting a person who's cool and teaching them, not good, not bad, but you have, we hired an admin who's a professional admin, went to school for administration work. Get this, Tanner. Surprise, surprise.
When did you hire an admin?
Let's see. We created the position a year and a half ago, and we hired our first professional admin just this year.
Cool.
So, and magically, Tanner, she's really good.
Do you take phone calls yet or no?
No, still don't take phone calls.
That was probably interesting to her. She probably questioned that. She's like, "Wait, I don't have to answer the phone."
So she will make phone calls, but you got to get in her first. But I will tell you this: that it still doesn't solve the problem of painters, because honestly, there's not that many super professional painters out there looking for work that share our core values. So for the leadership team, it completely changed who we can hire, Lauren. So yeah,
love it.
Let's see what else we got here. Bradley Ellison, Brad, in typical Brad fashion, very authoritative statement. I would never adjust my culture or brand to recruit anybody. I'd rather it just be harder to find people. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that your culture is your culture. It can be good and bad, but it has to be you. If it's not genuine to you, it's not going to be, the company isn't going to be the product of you, and it's not going to be genuine in the end. So, yeah. Let's see. Trying to read through the questions here. Oops, what is the promise? Sorry. I'm trying to scroll through and I'm hitting them. So, okay. Are you, I want to share what I'm observing from the outside of the group. Is there any other trends in questions? Like, has it been a lot of what do you charge for X and now it's something else? Or, are you seeing any trends or movements in what people are talking about in the group?
In the group, I think you have a vast majority of information, of course. I think that the trends are always going to be, what are you charging? I think a lot of people in this time frame of like November to January, they start to take on things that they normally wouldn't. So, and they're doing that probably because they didn't have solid marketing and it's like survival mode. So yes, you're seeing a lot of weird structures, a lot of weird things that people are usually taking. Maybe someone who doesn't do cabinets is taking a cabinet job. Maybe you're seeing someone that doesn't do commercial work. Like myself, actually, I took on a church, super big commercial job, super uncomfortable for us, but I actually finally transitioned to 3 crews. So for me, this was a really nice 3-week buffer for one of my crews. So I can kind of just, get our feet under us. So like, you're seeing a lot of different things. A lot of people are asking, which is cool. But more importantly, I think you're seeing a lot of people who are struggling. You're hearing it every day. I have no work. How do I find work? And it's like, we're almost scrambling to refer our marketing partners that we like. You got, Austin, you got Eric, you got, Ryan with Service Legend, you got Brandon, so you have like all these guys, and I'm sure they're getting bombarded with people that are interested now, which is cool.
But again, like it always goes back to like dig your well before you're thirsty. Hopefully that doesn't happen next year. So it's just a lot of that. I mean, I think people are getting a little panicky though. I can see it from last year. It wasn't as bad. Like, the schedules are a little light this year, and just economy and changes in the way people buy. So yeah, I mean, nothing out of the normal, but definitely a hyper focus on finding work, people trying new things, and definitely a lot of people wanting to get into new things. I love hearing questions of, hey, what product should I use to do this? And then you just have like a bombardment of, people coming in, be like, use this product, use this product, use this product. And and then Nick comes in with the final stamp, it gets like 80 likes.
Yeah.
He's like, wait, this guy's an expert in beards. What does he know about?
Yeah, I know, right? Thank you for allowing that expert badge too.
No problem.
I can just put whatever I want in here. Okay. So, okay, I 100% echo that, Tanner. From somebody from the outside who peruses your group every day, I have seen a major shift over the last couple of years from there's no good people out there to how do you get work? And that is, to me, it's not. So I make a point to never ascribe economic or macroeconomic things to affect me personally, right? Because I don't think our industry is professionalized enough, and I don't think I am enough that when they move the interest rate 0.75 of a point, I'm immediately going to be affected or be able to feel that. But to me, the industry only presents us 2 opportunities and 2 problems, whether the economy is good or bad. And we have finding jobs and finding people to work with us. And if it's a really, really good economy, jobs will be easy to get and people will be harder to get. And when it's a really crappy economy, people with master's degrees are going to be looking to paint and jobs are going to be scarce. So for me, it's a marketing problem of, do you spend your money on finding jobs or do you spend it on finding people? And
no one's ever broken that down so well. Of how in a great, can you go do that again?
Yeah. So this is just what I've observed. So if you think about it, if right now in the county where I am, unemployment is 2%, which is an unbelievable number. Like it's hard to believe 2% unemployment is real. So when unemployment is low, that means it's going to be very hard to find people, right? There's just not going to be a whole bunch of people out there. But if the economy is good, everybody's got jobs, people have money, and you're going to get leads a lot easier. Like leads are going to come. Like you may think it's hard to get leads now, but this might be easy times. Like you may have to fight with tooth and nail to get them later. Sure. If the economy takes a dump, let's talk Great Recession. Let's talk housing market crash. Unemployment goes to 8 or 10%. Like we're talking like families starving to death out there. All of a sudden, people want jobs really bad, and people with master's degrees will want to come work for you. This is what happened to me in 2007, 8, and 9, Tanner, when we went through that last thing. I just went back through. I didn't know I was going through it at the time, but you go back through now, and I look at the people who I was interviewing, lots of college degrees, just looking for a painting job to feed their family. But we had to fight to get work. Like if the economy is really crappy and people don't feel confident, they're not going to spend a lot on their house. Yeah. So now you need to divert your attention to finding jobs. And for me, this was presented to me because people are always like, what are you going to do when it's a recession? What are you going to do if the economy takes a dump? It's like, listen, there's a huge opportunity and a huge problem that's presented by every economy. And the same thing goes for the real estate market. That's how it was presented to me by somebody in the real estate market, which is when houses are high, great. I bought a bunch 10 years ago. I'm going to sell them. When the housing market's low, guess what? I'm going to buy a bunch. And there's an opportunity in each one. There's not an economy that presents only bad for everybody.
Interesting. Well, that's reassuring. I hope anyone listening soaks that up, because I agree. I think that what's going to happen, and this is similar in the real estate market, is of course you have a ton of realtors right now. Everyone wants to be a realtor, right? Well, you and I both know from what happened is if that market crashes, they're all going to leave, but there's going to be a small focus of realtors that still pick up the real estate deals, So that's promising. Awesome. I'm glad you reiterated that. It was good.
It'll always, and us as problem solvers, we have to do a bunch of first principle reasoning and actually get down to what's actually holding us back. And coming from somebody who knows this deeply, we're the backstop. The proverbial buck stops at one place, and it's us. So I never get spicy. I never push back unless it's Bradley Ellison. He can take it. He's one of the toughest dudes in the industry. I never push back on our fellow painters and business owners. But for the love of God, if you think a federal interest rate hike or some unemployment number or some change of president is going to affect you personally in a way where you can feel it this next year, you're wrong. I mean, it's just you. If you don't have an SOP written down and a training program and you're ascribing your failure or lack of profit to a presidential candidate, you have not done the basic things you need to do to make that even a possibility. So
there's 2 internal traits that I swear by give you ultimate success in any endeavor, and that's creativity and resourcefulness. And if you pair those 2 things together, you're going to create something good. Creativity is thinking outside the box, being different, going the other way, path less traveled, and resourcefulness is figuring out how to survive as you're being creative in any case, in any scenario. And I think like there's seasons in business, you just got to make it through, but being resourceful and seeking out resources. If you're watching this, obviously you're resourceful, you're learning, never stop that, so that's good.
I just updated a bunch of my master's classes with data. I like to shovel on data for people to help them, because we all have the feelings, whether we want them or not. The latest information that I can find is somewhere between 4 and 7% of all businesses in the United States, all businesses, any industry, any trade, whatever, only 4 to 7% have more than 10 employees or create more than $1 million worth of revenue a year. So for the people out there who are going through growing a business and you're like, wow, this is hard. Like, no shit. It is
4 to 7%. That's a pretty interesting stat.
You're in the single digit percentage points in the people who even have the fortitude to try this. So if it feels hard at some point, congratulations. It's like, that's really, wow. And it's such a good perspective. And the best piece of advice I've ever got was from Jason Paris years ago when he's like, yeah, this is hard. So just like it is, it's just hard. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And imagine back in high school or college, if you scored in the top 4 to 7 percentile of your graduating class,
you'd be on TV.
You score in the top 4 to 7% of Harvard Law, you're going to a Manhattan law firm and making millions of dollars a year. So it's great.
It's good.
Okay. Maybe one last question from everybody. Steve Lockwood, what's your weakest point as a leader?
Some people say it's weakness. To everyone looking out, it's just, empathy is what people would say is your weakest thing as a leader, because, data aside, sometimes you have to put aside data and look at something in a very empathetic, understanding way if you see future potential in somebody. So, in terms of it biting me in the butt, it has a few times, which has been a weakness. I've kept someone around way longer than they needed to be. I've made irrational decisions. I've had emotional responses to scenarios rather than logical ones. But I don't want to lose that because of the upside of what it can create when someone's given a chance after their 3rd chance and you take a deep dive into their life and understand what's been really going on and actually sit and invest time into coaching them through it. Because the upside is you build a very loyal employee base, which I believe I have. So that would probably be the weakest point or characteristic for me, only when it fails, but when it works, that's again, the gambler in me is saying, I want to bet on you and don't prove me wrong, and the problem is that when you get proof wrong and you give chances outside of what, you should have done, the worst thing you can do is just like shut off that valve and no one else gets a chance, so it's always like this. Right. So that would be for me, I guess.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That, it is so satisfying to hear you say empathy. It is something that's never talked about in our industry. And in fact, it is seen as a weakness. You're like, oh yeah, he's a pushover. He's empathetic, things like that. Whether you like it or not, the new workforce demands a certain level of empathy from their employer. Right. Like employers do a whole bunch of weird, callous things. Like, have you been watching any of the Twitter and Meta layoffs of people like posting their firing videos? They get on a virtual thing with some HR person and they have this scripted thing and basically say, you're locked out, tap out. This is your last day. Your position has been deemed not valuable. Goodbye. And you're just like, holy shit. Like that's it. Like,
That's
wow,
it.
you're one of the biggest companies in the world is doing that. And you realize like you could accomplish the same thing with empathy, with a certain level of empathy, you
Sure.
know? And yeah, very happy to hear you say empathy, because honestly, our whole industry could be a little more empathetic to the plight of everybody going on. And
Yeah.
likewise, you know, golden rule stuff. We would like our employees and our clients to be a little more empathetic and understand
Well,
we're all humans.
you said, hey, look, the idea someone's going to stick around with you for 32 years is not going to happen. Like, no one is, a very small percentage. And it's like, you need to be creative in how you approach this new market of employees. And empathy is one of those asterisks that isn't found in a lot of places. And if you can utilize it to your advantage to keep people around and to build some true loyalty, then that's what you're going to have to do. It's a survival technique as well. So
It's not, you know, so we think about like, sometimes we're apologists for the trades, right? It's like, well, we'll talk some people into coming to the trades. Maybe we'll offer some opportunities, but then they'll go get a real job or something like that. And to me, I've had a completely different sort of way of thinking about a lot of this stuff, which is if people like you, Tanner, do the things you're doing now, and this actually influences the influencers, and we bring some change to this industry, I can now envision a time 10 to 20 years from now where the trades are thought of as the empathetic training, apprenticeship, developing, mentoring, guiding, coaching industry. And everybody else in tech are looked at as these ruthless assholes. Like, and people will actually say, well, listen, if I want to get my head beaten in, but possibly, you know, make vice president, I'll go to Silicon Valley, but God, you got to have the right temperament. Or, you know what? I just want somebody to care about me. That's where the trades are. I completely envision a scenario where if we all do this right and a little empathy and people actually see how much we care, that's not out of the range of possibility. That is obviously not us now, right? Yeah. So interestingly enough, I think my weakest point as a leader dovetails with all that, which is I think I'm an utter failure at relaying and dispelling the opportunity and the inspiration that I have to other people here. Like if you would look at my track record of keeping employees, I do much better than the industry, but it is a dreadful number. And every single time I look at it, it just brings me sorrow. I know what the opportunities are in this trade. And it's not just painting. It's just, we happen to be painters, but really we're a leadership coaching entity where if somebody is really good, there is no end to what we can do together. And maybe they don't understand that that's the thing. That might be a possibility, but I honestly think that I just need to be way better at sharing the vision and the opportunities of what's out there. I think I'm not doing a good enough job, you know?
That's good.
All right. Let's see. We got to talk about Dripjobs, man. That's the one thing I haven't got to. So, so what, for the, again, 3 people who don't know, what is Dripjobs, Tanner Mullen?
Yeah. So, interesting enough, I was frustrated with everything that was offered to me. I wanted something that did almost everything in one app, and I sought out a development company to build what is now Dripjobs. And it's been a 3-year journey of creating software for people. I actually had over 50 companies before Dripjobs hire me to build out automations in their business. That would be me plugging 8 different softwares together, trying to get everything to work. Whenever they received a lead, to send it an email, to send it a text message. And it's just been, you know, a really fun journey to be able to use my skill sets, which I'm a nerd. You know, I love software. I tell people I'm lazy. I just like the easy way. I don't like I don't like the way of doing things the wrong way. I just like to get to A to B as fast as possible. And with, honestly, when we talk about mental health, right? It's like, if you're at the dinner table thinking about, did I send that person a quote? Or, oh my gosh, I got a phone call at 10 o'clock today and I don't remember where I wrote down their information. That could have been an opportunity that was passed up. And it's like, my mental health has improved by having a CRM in my business. I can't even emphasize how that's helped me. And this isn't a pitch from the owner of Dripjobs. This is someone that's also a painting business owner that runs 2 businesses. Dripjobs now has almost 500 companies using it. We're so proud of that. But it's also, hey, I can run my painting business
and still have the time to do this and still have time for my family. So for me, Dripjobs is a software, of course, but it's more than that. I think the approach of mental health, so important when you know your customers are automatically being followed up with. When you get a lead that comes in, they filled out a form, all their information is organized, they got a text message, they responded to the text message, and I didn't have to do anything. And they're taken care of. And when we talk about systems, we talk about creating a repeatable, duplicatable process that can be refined. And it's like your customer acquisition process needs to be repeatable, duplicatable. And what you talked about earlier was how we provide a custom service. Yes, that's true. But we don't need to create a custom acquisition process. We want to take everyone through the same process. We want to dispatch that to our estimators. And then at that point, we create a custom experience when it comes to building their quote and producing the job. But don't let the acquisition process be a headache. And then on the other side is production management. If you really look at this, and this is actually something that was an epiphany to me when we were building Dripjobs, is that we have 11 stages of how a customer could potentially interact with us. 11 stages. I'm going to go through them with you. The first one is a cold lead. So if you're running Facebook ads or Google, or if you're buying leads, you have a cold lead. This is someone that comes into your world that doesn't know you, but you know them, and you need to communicate with them to convert them to an appointment. Okay. So that's a cold lead. Then you have a warm lead. If you've bought leads, you know, not everyone's ready. They just press the button. Well, that doesn't mean that we forget about them. We just need to nurture them a little longer. So that's a warm lead. Someone that actually commits to an appointment is what we call our estimate requested stage. So they're ready to actually have an appointment booked. Then we have estimate scheduled. That's 4 stages. In draft, that's someone that's being actively having a proposal built. Someone that we sent a proposal to, we're waiting for a response. And then someone that may reject our proposal. So that right there is 7 stages of your sales cycle. And then you have 4 on the production side. People that accept your proposals, jobs that are scheduled, in progress, and complete. That is on the low end and average painting company. Nick, you're doing 650 jobs. Every single one of those people are going to go through at least 7 of those 11 stages. Okay, definitely all 4 on the job side. And usually they come in through some form or fashion. They get an estimate. You send them a proposal. You're in the process of creating one. What's cool about Dripjobs is that we automate communication to each one of those stages. So in other words, that customer is getting a personalized experience. Even though you're serving 650 people, they feel like they are your only customer. So that means when Joanne's job is scheduled, she's getting a notification of the date it was scheduled. The day before you start the job, she's getting a notification that, hey, we're going to be there tomorrow. After a day of the job being in progress, Dripjobs sends an automated text message. Hey, Joanne, how's the job going so far? Do you have any questions? Do you like the progress? And our customers are responding to this. So for me, I don't have an office admin, and I run a painting company with 3 crews. And simply, I'm doing that because an office admin's number one responsibility is 2 things: organization and communication. Dripjobs does that automatically. So at this point, again, mental health is a big part of this, being able to just get it out of your head and into the software. And that's been my mission and my passion, and so many others have shared in that. So, that's hopefully not too much of a pitch. It's just, hey, you're going to need something. Dripjobs has a lot of those features built in and automated for you.
It can be a pitch or not, Tanner, but coming from people we know, love, and trust, it's not a pitch, no matter how you pitch it. So no, and the proof in that too is overwhelmingly, not even just in your group, but all over the internet. When somebody says, hey, I need this bit of software, I need this bit of system, guess whose name gets brought up? Yours. Yeah. And it's for good reason. It's the people who use it and stuff like that. So coming from, I think I'll just speak for the entire industry, but like we do appreciate people who have been and are where we are, creating things for us, because it's going to be completely different than a group of college graduates that find a chink in the armor and want to create something and exploit it, who have never been in our shoes. So you're going to have a crazy competitive advantage, or you do have a crazy competitive advantage with that. And
for that.
Well, thank you for that, Tanner. And thanks for investing in our industry too. It just
it's awesome. I love it. Yeah. I love the people, everyone watching this. I know so many of you guys have commented. We're on a mission. Nick, as always, thank you for the exposure. What you've done this every week since I was a kid. I'm just kidding. But you're so consistent. And as I said, I commented on one of your things. You're the North Star of our industry. And I think it's important for people to be in on conversations like this. All the guests that you have always want to bring their best to the table with you. I'm sure you're used to that.
that is the standard that you provoke, and it's no different with me. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Doing this makes me question why we don't do this more often, because you are one of the best conversationalists I've ever had on this thing, Tanner. So
thank you.
Look forward. I'm setting the schedule for Ask a Painter this next year. In January, February, I usually kick it off with that series called Mastering the Basics, where I go through that boring, unsexy, nuts and bolts template, job costing, SOP stuff. But yeah, I think we could probably make it a 3 or a 4-peat next year if you're willing, Tanner. I enjoy this conversation.
I get smarter every time. I will put in my request to reserve a table for number 400 right now.
Dude.
If that's a possibility.
I'm not good at math. Is that like 40 years into the future? Like I might die before we hit episode.
No, that's actually a year from now, actually. But
okay, never mind, man. It's a possibility.
I forgot. That's 59 weeks from now. So I will take a couple spots anytime, man. No problem,
dude. I love this. So thank you, guys. We'll be monitoring this afterwards. Questions, comments, whatever you need, we'll be here for you. And Tanner, thanks again, man. Yeah, it means a lot.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah,
appreciate you.
Take care, buddy.